After having taken a look at the Apocryphal Gospels in the last part of the series, we now want to get an overview of the Apocrypha in general. In the following, we will use the term Apocrypha to refer to those writings that have not been included in the canon of the New Testament. The term is derived from the ancient Greek Apokryphos, English hidden or dark. There are more apocryphal books. For example, you can read this in Wikipedia. The biblical Apocrypha, from ancient Greek Apokryphos, hidden, denotes the collection of apocryphal ancient books thought to have been written sometime between 200 BC and AD 400. The Roman Catholic, Eastern Orthodox and Oriental Orthodox churches include some or all of the same text within the body of their version of the Old Testament, with Roman Catholics terming them deuterocanonical books. Traditional 80-book Protestant Bibles include 14 books in an intertestamental section between the Old Testament and the New Testament called the Apocrypha, deeming these useful for instruction but non-canonical. Yes, when thinking of Apocrypha, one might first think of writings that are not found in all Bibles in the Old Testament, as this overview shows. And you see here that's actually from the BibleGateway.com, an article there, and the reference is below the picture. A comparison of Old Testament canons, the Hebrew Bible, the Tanakh, the Roman Catholic and Orthodox canons, and the Protestant canon. And you see, okay, of course, the Torah, the Pentateuch is the same, and then we have history. And here you will see already books like Tobit or Judith, or here in poetry, there is Ecclesiasticus, Wisdom of Ben Sirach, or Wisdom of Solomon, in addition. And in the prophets, you will find more books here, like the Maccabees and others, or the book Baruch. It is interesting that in Luther 1543, as well as in the English King James Version of 1611, these Apocrypha are summarized at the end. In the Vulgate and Catholic Bibles, however, they are found among the other books. Even in the early Greek translation, the Septuagint, they are found in between. Many modern Bibles, however, adhere to the Jewish Bible, which has not contained them since the 1st century AD, where it was finalized, the canon of the Jewish Bible. So the answer as to whether a book is part of the canon of my Bible can vary. As far as the New Testament is concerned, such differences no longer exist. But in the first centuries after Christ, besides the Apocryphal Gospels, which we have talked about in the last part of this video series, there were definitely other genres of apocryphal writings. For example, apocryphal Acts of the Apostles. The canonical Acts of the Apostles, also just called Acts, describe in more detail the missionary activity of only a few apostles. Therefore, other Acts of the Apostles or Acts appeared in the 2nd and 3rd century. For example, the Apocryphal Act of Andrew, that of Apocryphal Acts of Thomas, Apocryphal Acts of Philippus, Matthias, Bartholomeus, Barnabas. And interestingly, Apocryphal Acts of Paul, John, and Peter. What they have in common is that they are hardly based on facts, but are more influenced by the Greco-Roman novel of the era. An example from the Acts of John, and I'm citing against Bruce Metzger's book, The Canon of the New Testament, so translation of the German one which I've read in the past. The author reports that Jesus constantly changed his figure. Sometimes he looked like a little boy. sometimes like a handsome young man. Sometimes he appeared with a bald head and a long beard. Then again like a youth with his first dawn on his cheek. Before his death, Jesus gathers his disciples in a circle around him and sings a hymn to the Father while his apostles hold hands and danced around him in a circle. The terminology of the hymn borrows heavily from the Gospel of John and its prologue. At the same time, the author gives it a docetic flair. Incidentally, they are the oldest source of the celebration of the Eucharist for the dead. Interesting. Besides that, there was also the genre of apocryphal epistles. In the New Testament, in the canon of the New Testament, most of the writings belong to the epistolary genre. In the Apocrypha, on the other hand, only a few letters are found, probably because it was quite difficult to produce genuine sounding letters. Metzger, for example, describes here the Epistola Apostolorum in this way. In short, the writing represents a Catholic Christian's fierce attack on Gnosis. Okay. But we have to keep in mind that there was also a third Corinthians letter, which was highly respected by the Armenian Church, and the Laodicean letter. For this, of course, the epistle to the Colossians in Colossians 4:16 had provided the steeple, as we have already seen at the beginning of the series. Presumably, however, this was written toward the end of the 3rd century. Jerome reports that some read the letter to the Laodiceans, but it is rejected by everyone. And third, there are and were several apocryphal apocalypses. And the most important apocryphal apocalypse is the Apocalypse of Peter, from the period between 125 to 150 Anno Domini AD. In the Canon Muratori, so the first list we know of books, it is listed after the revelation or apocalypse of John. In the Codex Claromontanus, the list of canonical books is concluded with the Apocalypse of Peter. Opinions about it differed among the church fathers and also in the congregations. And Metzger writes, the unknown author, who was the first to introduce pagan ideas of heaven and hell into Christian literature, drew his conception of the future life from a number of pre-Christian traditions. That was the apocryphal Apocalypse of Peter. So already in the 1st century, there was a flood of writings circulating in the churches. Some of them were also read and appreciated in the meetings and quoted by the fathers of the church. Nor could the title or the supposed author be relied upon as authority. The disciples of Jesus had to examine and evaluate the content, as we can read in 1 Thessalonians 5:19-25, according to Berean Standard Bible. Do not extinguish the spirit. Do not treat prophecies with contempt, but test all things. Hold fast what is good. And that's what they did. And that's probably also the key to understand how the canon of the New Testament was created in the first centuries of Christianity. Thank you very much for viewing the series and listening, and goodbye.